but those have that. It's like any competitive business environment. All of us in our businesses have had to tighten our belt. We've had to cut anything that looked like fat, and we've had to look at turnovers. We're going to have to look at our margins, and I think landlords that have done that in their kind of way in their property business are the ones that I think that are doing well now.
We are this evening in conversation with David Beattie, who's a founding director at Chorus Property Group, looking at how can landlords prepare for the new year. And I want to hear from the landlords at home, how 2020 that you've picked up along the year. And of course, what have been some of the things that kept you afloat? David has already pointed to the fact that there certainly were difficult moments during this period, and there were instances where, some landlords had to try and make alternative plans. Others, of course, have been going as far as selling the properties in their portfolio. Do you want to hear from you at home? Let us know if you're a landlord. What did you do this year that certainly got you afloat and that you found useful along your property journey? I can see some of the love that we're getting on our Facebook page. Sarah Matetsa sending those green hearts. Noni Nkutha, Menzi Butelezi, Queen Tako, as well as Ugoso Khumalo. And Onumenzi is saying rates hikes. Well, we are back. Rent is also going up. Rent is not going to go up just yet. And I think, landlords are going to be hard-pressed to be able to find tenants who are going to pay higher rent just yet, because there's still quite a lot of stock in the market. And there's still prices that are, we'll say, at relatively current levels and sometimes even lower than what we saw pre-COVID. So for many landlords in so many different areas, you're going to be hard-pressed to be able to charge higher rentals just yet, even though we did see rates going higher. And also rates going higher, in the past month actually can't be the determining factor for you increasing your rental, because January rates rental today because of the recent interest rate hike that we've had. And this is, of course, also just assuming that you've had this property for a while. And even if you bought the property during COVID, where we were already experiencing low interest rates, we already said that part of running your numbers is making the financial assumption or the numerical assumption of, prime plus, and certainly prime plus at the levels that we had in January. So if your landlord says they want to increase rent because we've just had an increase in interest rates, they don't know what they're talking about. That we can certainly say authoritatively. And I think, David, when we then look at sometimes, and this is something that we see from new landlords in particular, where, the market shifts slightly. And I mean, an interest rate going up, especially by 25 basis points, given the history of sort of the past couple of months and seeing the decreases, the reaction or even the strategy cannot go to let me increase rent, because the numbers that you should have run, or the due diligence certainly that you should have done, would have indicated you would have run it on let's say prime plus 3, and that's current prime, plus 3, and you'd still be able to afford it if those were the rates, as opposed to running it on prime and prime being at 7%. Nobody is doing that, especially when we reach that level, because we knew we were not going to stay there for an extended period of time. Any tips for those landlords who are still not quite getting some of those in most residential properties of that rate is not that high. Certainly when we look at their property, when we look at which point do you then go about shifting the rental up, or certainly thinking about it, because I think some think about it in isolation and not looking at where the market is holistically and other comparable properties rather in their area or even in the same complex as them.
I mean, look, some of the rent value is connected or CMA or comparative market analysis. Your rent is valued at what, in comparison to the rents that are around in the same area. And that's direct. That is really what the tenants are looking at. The tenants, unfortunately, as much as I am very, very sympathetic to the cost that increases that landlords have to bear, the tenants are not really cared about that. They just know that they can get a property for 5,000 rand elsewhere, and for the same property you may be wanting 6,000 rand. That your property for 6,000 rand, unfortunately, is simply not going to be let out. So you've really got to look at your interface and the market to value your rental. When you value your costs, when you look at your costs, be conservative. I agree. Look at that percentage much higher, your bond percentage much higher than what it is at the moment, so that you are covered. Because when the interest rate goes up, unfortunately, you can't just increase your rent. First of all, your lease agreement won't allow that. And second of all, you're going to lose tenants and great tenants at that if you do that. So I would highly propose that you do be conservative in your costings. Bearing in mind is that the interest rates over the last while has been at record lows, decades record lows. So this is very unusual at the moment. I think what's been the saving grace for many landlords over COVID and over the last 18 months has been that the interest rate has come down and the interest rate is so low. Heaven help what the market would have been like for many landlords, or most landlords, if the interest rate was still what it was a few years ago. So, but these good times on the interest rate perspective, one needs to budget going forward on a higher interest rate. What we also find is, and this has been quite something, is that good quality tenants, a low interest rate, we as landlords, we do like that because our bond's much lower. What it really has done is that it really has affected the tenant market and made it much tougher to find quality tenants, because quality tenants can say, well, I can rather buy for the same price as I can rent because the interest rates are so low on the bonds. What we're finding now, as much as I don't like personally the interest rate increasing, with the interest rates now going up 0.25%, probably 0.25% a quarter, maybe that's what I've heard. I think even that changing, I think is going to make the tenant market a bit more competitive. I think you're going to find hopefully less buyers in the market for landlords and more tenants, and which means that hopefully rents can slowly but surely start coming up again. And I think we're going to see, interestingly, a shift on that. In the last 2 to 3 months, or the first time in 18 months, we're actually starting to see some increases on renewals of leases. Not every time, and not the kind of increases we'd like, but we were pushing the 5% increases where 4 or 5 months ago that just wasn't even on the table. Yeah. Now for renewals, we are looking to try and get a 5% increase, and probably getting it 2/3 to 3/4 of the time, which is, and that's a standard increase which we're all used to. And partly, I think it's the economic situation, which is slightly better. And partly, I think it's because the interest rate is now turning, and you're going to get fewer buyers, quality buyers in the marketplace, and those buyers are now going to be quality tenants. But as landlords, watch your costings and be conservative in your costings, because at this moment, you cannot push your income. That's not a lever which is very easy to push at the moment.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important one to always bear in mind, that you need to understand what's easy to push, what's easy to increase and decrease. And often rental is not the thing that's easiest to certainly increase, particularly in this economy. I think that there certainly was a time when landlords were, as a standard, even doing double digits, rental escalations. And of course, we've seen that in the past few years that has not been the case. And so landlords really do need to be very careful and track the data of the respective areas that they have their properties in. This is not a thumbs up. You certainly need to do a market analysis and always be on the ball when it comes to your market analysis. But in the meantime, I want us to go for a quick break, see who the lucky winner of I think we've got 1,000 rands now in the money bag this evening, as we are, of course, giving away that cash every single evening right here live on the show. And that is for the great competition that we're running on our Facebook page. If you don't know about it, go to the pin post on our Facebook page, comment as many times as you want, and you're certainly going to increase your odds of walking away with that cash prize. But in the meantime, let's have a look at who the lucky winner this evening is. And that lucky winner this evening, Tashi Combs. Tashi Combs walking away. It's 1,500 rands. That's actually in the money bag. So congratulations to you, Tashi Combs. Remember, you have to drop us a message down here below in order to claim your prize. And if you want to be just like Tashi Combs, all you have to do is go to our Facebook page, comment on the pinned post on our Facebook page as many times as you would like. And of course, we are going to make sure that if you are watching us live and comment, then you're going to walk away with that cash prize. If Tashi Combs doesn't do that, we're going to have a roll over to 2,000 rands tomorrow evening. But I know some of you always want a bigger money bag, and some people are always, of course, looking for the person to be watching live and to drop us that text. We'll see if Tashi Combs is indeed watching us live, and we will take it from there. Continue our conversation with David Beattie, founder and director at Chorus Property Group. How can landlords prepare for the new year? Now, David, now that we've explored, the year that was, certainly some of the learnings, some of the mistakes that landlords have done, when we look forward to 2022 and also use the knowledge, the insight that we've picked up in the past 18 months, COVID era, that has really changed how some landlords have even run their business. What can we anticipate for the new year, and what should we be planning for as landlords for 2022?
Look, I think the first thing I can think of, and the first thing which I've been talking to myself about, is mindset. Look, the market is tough. Things are toughest that I've seen in 2 decades. But I think if we have the right mindset and we are filled with hope, and that we have the right mindset to look at opportunities that are in the marketplace, I do think there's tremendous opportunities, and I do think we can have a tremendously good year next year. Secondly, I think we've got to just get the basics right. The days of being passive or thinking that things are just going to happen, I think those days we're not in those days at the moment. I think we've got to focus on doing the basics right, be professional in our relationship with our tenants, be professional in our administration, be constantly looking at our cost cutting, making sure we could be dropping our costs, making sure that we're being aware of what's going on in the marketplace around us, so that we can be adaptable, we can be flexible to react to the way the market is. But I do think the bottom of the valley has been achieved, and I don't think that we're going to shoot the lights out next year. But I think that we can plan for a little bit of certainty, even from a political situation. I'm not sure when elections are or whatever, but at the moment, I do think there's a little bit of stability. It's not a great stability, but it's a bit of stability that we can actually consolidate and look at our portfolio, look at our property and say, how can I do this better? As opposed to white knuckle survival, I do think we should be turning our minds towards how can we consolidate what we've got, and how can we do better, so that I can build a system so that maybe I can even build my portfolio going forward. But we do need to maintain that discipline on our costs. We do need to plan as though things are not going to get much better. As I say, I'm not planning doom and gloom. I'm just not planning that because I'm going to automatically get my 10% capital growth next year on my property asset, things are going to be okay. I need to plan that I'm going to get 0% increase on my rentals, knowing that I may well get a few percent. I'm planning for my cost to go up a little, and I'm going to consolidate. I'm going to work with my partners, whether it's my rental agent or with my tenants, to really just provide that excellent service, because those landlords that are doing that are doing great business.
And I think then, David, when we then look at mistakes to avoid for the new year, what are the mistakes that we should avoid for the new year? Because I know that there's some people who are also going to use the insight from the past, nearly 2 years, and perhaps may want to change things up quite a bit, and perhaps focus on the wrong things. So what are some of the things that we should definitely not do as landlords in 2022?
I think we should not be distracted. We've got, as a landlord, we've got there's 4 main needs of a landlord. Let's just talk about the first one. The first one is to focus on cash flow. So what you want to do is make sure that you know when your vacancies are coming up, when the end of the lease agreement's up, and you planned ahead when you're going to start marketing for that replacement. Number 2 is that you're making sure that your rent collection procedures are in place. So don't be reactive for the year. Don't make that mistake. Be proactive. put in your diary, like we all are for our meetings for the new year. I'm already saying this is my diary for the new year. Do it for your property investment too. Know exactly on the 25th of the month you're doing your billings. On the 1st of the month, you diarize that you're checking your bank statement for your rent. That you diarize 2 months before the end of your lease agreement. In your diaries, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to worry about it before the end of the lease agreement. So you're going to be in contact with your tenant. So be reactive. Set up a system for the year, and you can get on with the rest of your life or the rest of your business, knowing that these systems are set up. Don't be reactive. Be proactive.
And that's such an important one, David. I think when we talk about using or getting a system in place, there's certainly different kinds of tools. I use TPN for managing the majority of the properties, and it gives you great triggers on, when a lease is coming to an end, and so you're able to even know when to start communicating with your tenant, whether they're interested in renewing the lease or they won't be renewing the lease. Be proactive as a landlord as much as possible, and there's certain things that you can really automate even in the way that you communicate with your tenants. So that's a really important thing to always bear in mind, because we want to eliminate certain admin, because we're very mindful that for the most part, a lot of landlords, this is not your day job. You actually have a day job, and you have, perhaps a few properties that you self-manage or even work with an agent who manages them. But you're not. This is not the core focus in your day-to-day life. So you really do want to put in systems that are going to make it easier and very systematic for you to be able to deal with your portfolio. And David, as we slowly wrap up our conversation, any tips for new landlords? So those people who've certainly been watching the show for the past year and even longer, who now have the right tools and confidence to get that first investment property in the new year. Any tips and insights for them in terms of what to do, what not to do as a new landlord, and what they should get right from the get-go? That's certainly going to set them up for success.
Yeah, I think one of the first things is to make sure you've got some mentors around you. Really do reach out. I've been talking to some new landlords, and I've sent them a book, or I just made sure that they can call me anytime just for the quick question. So make sure we've got those around you, whether it's an attorney that you're dealing with or for advice. Second of all, just make sure your costings are done well. Buy at the right price. Don't buy on emotion. And I'm talking to myself here. You really got to. It's not about being emotionless. It's about keeping to the disciplines. Be disciplined in a business perspective, because many years ago when I started out in property, I could buy a property and automatically made money. But I thought I was a superhero, and I thought I knew what I was doing. I actually was stupid. I actually didn't know what I was doing. I was just lucky. Nowadays, you can actually be a success by doing the right things.
Yeah, and I think, David, I think one of the big things there, sorry to cut you off, is to make data-driven decisions, right? Yes. And that's how you also easily don't fall victim to the FOMO, because there's certainly quite a lot of FOMO where property is concerned. We've seen a lot of it, particularly, during this lockdown period. And so when you make data-driven decisions, it's so much easier not to fall prey to the FOMO, because the data will be fairly clear on whether that's a good deal or whether you've just hyped yourself up and the numbers just don't stack up. And sometimes the numbers don't stack up, and it doesn't make sense for you to pursue that particular property.
Don't be driven by ego. And those that keep the discipline, I just want to encourage those landlords that are starting out. I've been in the business for 20 years. I've seen landlords start out, and I've seen them 5 or 10 years later. And you'll be amazed how you sow a seed, you do the basics well now. One of my landlords started with one property. He's now got 2.5 billion under management. It's possible. If you do the right things and you're learning and you're curious and you listen to your podcasts, those kind of things, those are all really good advice. With a strong mentality, with lots of hope, with perseverance, you will succeed. And it's not much more complicated than that. But I've seen too many success stories to know that you can make it if you do the basics right.
And I think, that's actually just such a great note to leave it on, that you can make it if you get the basics right. And we've certainly explored what the basics are with David in other episodes, and of course other episodes throughout. So do go back to some of those great episodes. Don't make ego-driven decisions. Make sure that you are making data-driven decisions. And don't fall prey to the FOMO. It's there. It's a lot of it. And sometimes we as landlords, post the joys of being a landlord and don't post the drama and also just the boring side of being a landlord. So I think be careful of getting a really good holistic picture of what you are signing up for. David, it was such a pleasure to have you on the show. It's always so great. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And of course, for joining us throughout the year. It's been such a pleasure to have you with us.
Zama, it's been my pleasure too, absolutely, and it's such a joy to see the success of this program, because I think it's in such incredible use and need in our marketplace because of the people I deal with every day. Thank you.
David Beattie, who's a founder and director at Chorus Property Group, wrapping up the Thursday edition of the Private Property Podcast with myself, Zamantungwa Khumalo. Well, unfortunately, our winner, Tasha Combs, did not raise her hands and claim that prize. So we're going to have another rollover, 2,000 rands available for tomorrow. Of course, that is the competition that we are running on our Facebook page. I'm going to wrap it up with a comment from Umenzi Butelezi saying, because of the nature of my job, I let the bulk of the work be done by the agent. Dropping the rent got me the tenants I have. I'm fortunate to still be making a positive cash flow. The tenants are very responsible. And I think that's one of the adjustments, then make those adjustments because they certainly do go a long way, because you end up getting good, responsible tenants. We know how expensive getting new tenants can be, or certainly how expensive having the wrong ones and having to get them out and getting good ones tends to be. So don't make rash decisions where that is concerned as well. Well, that's it for myself, Zamantungwa Khumalo. I'll be back on your screens tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. But do stay tuned for the Farming Podcast with Mbali Noko at 8 p.m. Until then, hope you're staying home and staying safe.